Exclamation, everybody, and welcome back to Cube Ramblings. If I haven't blown your ears out, I will at some point. Sorry, I was just making a little side joke there that you guys probably aren't in the know about. But anywho, it is for me Saturday night, October the 11th, 2014. It is almost October 12th. I'm recording this a little bit later than I normally do, but lots of things happened today. You know, I'm at that point of the year where my weekends are somewhat consumed by a little bit of travel and other things. So you know, that's a thing, unfortunately. I'm trying to make sure that I keep up with all the recordings and stuff, and try to get as much recording done as I can, so we can have a long and prosperous holiday here with all the videos going up. And I will continue to ramble as much as I possibly can in this episode. Actually, I do have a lot of items that I want to cover as far as news and other things going. But before I do that, let's start out with Cube World itself here. No new news at all. It's still radio silence. And you know, I at the end of last episode, as you can see in the beginning of this episode, I am in this desert biome, and the two things that are, well, the good thing about a desert biome is that the mobs in here are almost always that I've seen very high level, and I can get a bunch of experience off of them. The downfall is that, as you can see right now on your screen, my frame rate tanks quite a bit just in these biomes. It seems like any other biome I've had no problems with, as far as I know, but just in the deserts I have a lot of problems. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to try to get through this desert as quickly as I can, and we'll get on to another biome. My goal right now, my running goal has been, well, there's several of them. One is I still want to find a lava lands biome. That's the only biome I have not found yet in the alpha version of the game as it stands today. The other thing is I have a bunch of recipes that I bought early on in the game for, power 100 weapons and stuff. And for some reason or another, my ranger here has ceased leveling quite a bit. Even though I'm going up in levels, my power level has not been really going up. And it's kind of stuck. It's been stuck at, I think, 86 for a while. It might be at 87 now. I don't know. I don't quite understand how the power increases yet. It's probably something I should look up at some point on the Cube World Wiki. But I've been trying my best to eventually get that up to power level 100 so we can actually utilize some of those weapons and various materials or recipes to craft weapons. So that's my secondary objective there. And also, of course, it's to provide a nice backdrop while I ramble on about anything and everything that's on my brain at any given time. So, that said, yeah, no new updates to Cube World that I know of, no new news that I know of. It's status quo, unfortunately, right now. So still in the waiting game. Interestingly enough, this is my 64th Cube World episode, and I believe my 33rd Cube Ramblings episode. Since I didn't originally call this series Cube Ramblings, I was just calling it Cube World because it's basically what it had become. But I rebranded it a little while ago, just to not confuse people as to what exactly this is. I don't want to confuse people to believe that this is an LP, because it's really not. It has spawned into a podcasty type of thing. I guess almost it's kind of a cross between podcast and blog, I guess, or vlog, I should say, because really it's just me talking, rambling, and random things, but I also bring some news into it and my thoughts on that news, and so on and so forth. So, speaking of which, let's get to some of our topics here now that I've kind of explained where I'm going with Cube World and where it's continuing. And we'll jump on over to... So I had a few topics that I had listed from last time that I didn't really get a chance to talk about because I rambled on about other things. But the first one that I will tackle here is there's been recently, over the past couple weeks, a lot of talk around sponsored content and branded deals and how that affects, YouTubers and streamers and so on and so forth. How there's been sort of I'd say something of a backlash, but not, I think it's more of the label, the sellout label is being applied to numerous people that it probably shouldn't be applied to. And you see that kind of thrown out quite a bit, and it's not really being used properly. But it all revolves around how games companies deal with YouTubers and Twitchers, and how YouTubers and Twitchers are making their money. So I figured I would try to address some of that, or at least explain what's going on here, because there are several news items around it. Let me start with the news item first. The first item that I picked off here was Twitch TV has come out recently within the last couple of weeks with a blog post, and I'll leave a link to their blog post here in the description as always, about sponsored content and how they're going to increase their transparency around that sponsored content. So for those unaware, Twitch TV, the streaming video gaming site that I tend to stream stuff on Friday nights and others do as a full-time gig, they often have this Twitch sort of sponsored events that show up on their homepage. They sort of, give them, I guess, top billing would be the appropriate thing, above the fold, if I use the old media standards of classifying things. And a lot of those are, gaming events that are around like the launch of games. I believe Smite was on there at one point in time. I know League of Legends, a lot of the tournaments get on there. A lot of the MLG stuff, Major League Gaming stuff gets on there. And various other launches. I've seen, I think the Destiny launch was on there. They were sort of as a sponsored content stream and all that stuff. And what's not immediately apparent to people watching those streams, unless you're incredibly cynical like me, what's not immediately apparent is where, the fact that some of those events are being sponsored by the game devs themselves, or the publishers of the game themselves, and that there's money exchanging hands there for that top billing. It's basically they bought advertising space and are actively paying the streamers and whatnot to sit there and play the game, which, so there's this idea that floats around in the YouTube sphere and in the Twitch sphere around gaming videos and gaming streamers, that there needs to be some objectivity there, which I don't necessarily agree with, unless they're, I don't necessarily agree with it. Even if they're reviewers, I don't necessarily agree with it, because you're asking someone who's reviewing a game, who has played the game and has enjoyed it potentially, to give a completely unbiased uncolored, generically objective viewpoint of a game, and that's just that makes for very boring content. Number one, and number two, that doesn't really help you as a consumer. You really want to, as a consumer, be able to look at multiple videos, look at multiple personalities, and say, okay, I know that this guy really likes RTSs, so I know that if he says that something's really awesome and it's an RTS game, I should look at somebody who really hates RTSs and see what he thinks of this game, and hopefully he has also reviewed that game. Although, that's kind of the more difficult prospect, is to find someone who reviewing stuff that they really don't like, or I should say genres that they really don't like. It's a little bit harder to come by than the ones reviewing ones that they do like. But that, it's been addressed by several of the larger YouTubers, so I'm not really going to go too much into their arguments. But basically, the idea that someone's going to be completely objective and, they're playing something that they're almost playing something in completely out of their own skin, I guess. I'm trying to somehow explain this. It's like you're saying to people, we want you to be completely, plainly objective about what you're playing, but we also want you to have fun and be really engaged with what you're playing. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really, those two things don't really match up together, right? They're opposite ends of the spectrum. It's like either you're really engaged and you're really enjoying what you're doing, or you're completely unengaged and just spewing out binary, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. Right? It's just most people fall somewhere in the middle there. Or, if it's someone who religiously plays this game because they really enjoy it, you can expect that they're going to be skewed more to the passionate side of things than to the dispassionate side. So the whole thing is kind of it's weird, but I understand also on the same, in the same breath, that you do want to have a certain level of transparency. And I'm actually a pretty big fan of transparency, full transparency to the fullest extent that you can do it, that's the fullest, safest extent that you can have transparency. So I applaud that they are, what Twitch has come out and said in their blog post is that they're going to, if they are sponsoring content, it will have a notification on it, on the stream right there that says, hey, this is paid for by blah, blah, blah. This is paid for by the publisher. This is paid for by the developer, so on and so forth. I think that's only a positive thing. I can see, I can't wrap my brain around why streamers and YouTubers would not want to disclose that information. I feel like there was no malice involved for the most part. There are a few trolly channels out there, but you can spot them from a mile away. They've got the thumbnails of bikini-clad women that have nothing to do with the content of the video, and their videos are all 4 minutes long, and they've got 2-minute advertisements at the beginning and the end of them. I mean, you can spot those channels a mile away. It's easy enough to see that. We're talking, legitimate community members who do this for the love of it, and also kind of want to get paid. Kind of need to put some food on the table, if you know what I mean. Those people, I don't see them as having not disclosed this information out of malice. I think it's more out of a lack of understanding. And also, there's the other point that I was sort of alluding to a little bit earlier, which is when you release that information, you say, hey, look, I am playing Smite. I'm using Smite as an example because there was a recent campaign that went through I think the Maker Studios people, or well, I'm sorry, Polaris people, which are all owned by the same, they're all owned by Disney, so it doesn't really matter at this point. But through the Polaris network people, that they were all playing Smite, and they were getting additional monetary support for doing said videos and content. And all the ones that I watched were very open and honest about it. But I could see from their perspective where, from the streamers and from the YouTubers' perspective, where they kind of hesitate to release that information because there's been a lot of weird backlash against it. It's like you tell people, hey, this is, you tell your viewers, hey, I got a little extra money for this. I got a little extra money to do this, or a little bit extra money to do that. And they get really, really angry about it. There's a vocal minority of subscribers that get really upset about that because it's like you've betrayed them, which sounds ridiculous. Given a YouTuber that is doing it full time and it needs the money from it to put food on the table, it sounds ridiculous that they shouldn't take some deals like that. Although it all comes down to how the contract is negotiated and everything else. If they took a bold-faced contract that was very shady and they didn't negotiate something that was a little less back alley, then that seems more akin to something that should be okay, should be allowed by the community. If they take some deal that's like on the other end of the spectrum, then I can see there being some consternation around it. But for the most part, I don't see. I think that their omission was more because of the fact that they get this backlash. They get labeled as sellouts, which is the most wrong label to ever put on somebody like that, because they're not really selling out. If they were selling out, then the minute they turned ads on their videos, they sold out, which was probably years and years ago, right? The mere fact that I guess that's the difference, right? Is that people look at the ads and they've either been conditioned to ignore the ads, or they've installed ad block and they don't get any, which means the YouTuber themselves doesn't get anything either, or the streamer themselves doesn't get anything from it. Or I guess it's because that's the more established pattern that people are aware of and used to, that they understand that it's been done enough and transparent enough that they understand that model, that when you do something a little bit different, a little bit over and above that, I can see it sends off a little bit of a shiver down the spines of a few who go, oh wait, something's different here, something's not quite right here, and they start digging into it. And then if you're not transparent about it, they think that they're obviously not talking about this because they're ashamed of it or something. It's like, no, probably they don't really realize that it's a problem. It's probably no malice actually involved. It's just they didn't realize that there would be such a passion about it, and they didn't want to invite that passion in either against it, because it's ultimately affects their bottom line of being able to do it as a career. But because from what I understand, the ad rates and stuff on YouTube are constantly going down, and it makes sense. They're probably going to continue to go down until it's very unprofitable for anybody to do anything on YouTube. Mostly because everybody and their grandmother is making videos now. The barrier to entry is a lot lower than it's probably the lowest it's ever been in recent memory. I bought Fraps years and years ago, and in fact, I bought it so long ago. I think I only bought it for like $5 or something. It was like an early beta or something at the time, and I bought it because I had seen a website out there that was doing, and I don't recall the website now, but I saw a website that was doing, people would upload the endings of games, so you could see how games ended, which sounds odd, but given my predilection for never finishing a game, prior to that, I actually visited that site quite a bit because I'm like, hey, I would kind of like to know how that game ended that I never finished. It was genius, honestly. It was a genius idea, and it had spurred me to actually buy Fraps at the time. But I didn't realize back then that my computer just couldn't handle it. It was just too slow. So it just sat on a network attached drive for years until I decided that I wanted to do this thing. Until I basically got to a point where I have not turned on the TV in about 6 or 8 months, I would say. I do all of my quote unquote TV watching either on Netflix or on YouTube. And when I realized that that's what I was doing, I was like, you know what? I actually always had a thought that I would do something like this, just not, LPing. It was just, like I said, the endings of games. I thought, well, you know what? Maybe I'll do this LPing thing. And that's what then spurred me to get hardware that would be sufficient to do all the recordings and everything else. And, it's weird how you come upon some of these things, but it's since that barrier is so low now, it's everybody and their grandmother is doing the YouTube videos, and so the ad rates are going down. It's supply and demand, right? So many ads are being displayed now that they can't really. It's all impression based usually. So if a company buys 1 million impressions for, we'll say $6,000 maybe, then if you divide that by, say, 1 million YouTubers, that's one ad per YouTuber, or we'll say, we'll make the math easy. We'll say one ad per YouTuber. And with the amount of gaming videos and regular blogging videos and everything else going up, they all could potentially show that ad, right? So companies are burning through their $6,000 budget probably in a week or two, if even that. And, once they've done that, they've done it. They may not come back as a repeat, customer for many, many months because their campaign is over. And so it's just because of that, the ad rates are plummeting a lot of times. Or the opposite happens where the ad plays so often on so many channels, as we've seen on a lot of gaming channels, that people start skipping it or don't really pay attention to it because they've seen it 100 times already. And YouTuber doesn't get any of that. Google gets all of that because they get paid up front for the actual campaign that's launched. But they won't cut a check for the actual YouTubers or for the actual content creators because the person didn't, the users didn't watch the video or watch the ad. So I can see that, and that's only going to get worse. That's only going to get worse because LPing has become so popular now, and there's a lot of popular YouTube channels, and again, it's so easy to get on there now. From that perspective, I'm seeing a lot of YouTubers looking at a lot of streamers, we'll say YouTubers, a lot of YouTubers looking for alternate means to get enough money to sustain themselves. So you see a lot of YouTubers that will go and do live streaming, and as part of that, they'll set up the subscriptions on Twitch, and people can subscribe for a monthly rate and get what do you get, emoticons, and you get subscriber only chat and weird stuff like that. But You see a lot of them doing that. A lot of them doing like, hey, let me stream the game and record while I'm streaming, and then I'll put it up on YouTube and sort of double dip a little bit. But because then you have ads on YouTube as well. I say kind of sort of because the problem with live streaming is that most people are not available to watch the live stream, but would be available to watch the VOD, or which Twitch has managed to screw up royally the way you do VODs now, or go watch it on YouTube, and whenever they want to. So I say double dipping, but it's kind of sort of not, because the same people that watched the live stream are probably not going to be the ones that watched the YouTube video, because they've already seen that and a bag of chips. I don't know why I felt the need to inject a bag of chips into that sentence, but I did. Just deal with it. Just deal with it. So that was, Twitch is now making policies on it. In addition to that, what I haven't touched upon yet is the branding deal thing. There was another article that I will link you to, talking about Shadows of Mordor, Middle-earth Shadows of Mordor, the new game from WB Studios and whoever developed it. The name escapes me at the moment. Apparently, and this started, I believe, Total Biscuit had sent out a tweet at some point in time. He went to try to get, and the news sites picked up on it. But apparently, several YouTubers and streamers were given early access, review copies of the game. You have to really, I have to make sure that my English is correct there, because early access means something entirely different. They were given review copies of the game early, but in exchange for those review copies, they were told to enter into what's called a branding deal, which is kind of an umbrella thing that says something like, hey, you have to do 5 videos on this. Normally a branding deal is like, if you're a gaming website, it would be something like, you have to skin your site to look like this, and you have to write so many articles on this game, or you have to do that. I think for the YouTube stuff, it's mostly you have to do a certain number of videos, and they have to come out a certain time, and they have to potentially, depending on the contracts, have to say certain things, or touch upon certain bullet points. There was a controversy back in the day where I think it was around the Xbox One, actually, when it was released. A lot of reviewers, hardware reviewers, got early copies of it, review units, and were told that, hey, you have to, I think it was around the Xbox, you have to have positive things to say about it. You shouldn't say anything negative about it. That being said, there were still those who did say negative things about it, who had entered into that deal, that branding deal, and then of course in exchange for all that, they got extra money, or a better CPM if it was that, which is the cost per 1,000 impressions on ads. Normally it's a very low number. Normally it's like, I think it's normally $7 per 1,000. I think it might be even less than that in some cases. It really depends on the campaign that you have access to. And then they were offering something like $9 to $12 or something like that per 1,000. So at Microsoft, that was for a limited time to, I think it was to Polaris channels, or was it Machinima channels? Maybe it might have been Machinima channels. I don't know. I'm going from memory here, and I don't have a link to that either. So you're gonna have to you're gonna have to do some Googling for that to find that one again. But So that's kind of a branding deal. It's like, hey, you got to do a certain number of videos. They got to have certain content. And it really depends on how in-depth the branding deal is that really determines what content gets produced. The red flag is if they start saying things like Microsoft was saying, which is what caused the controversy, rightfully so, which is, hey, you must say positive things about it. Most, I would say most reviewers will probably, if they see a contract like that, they'll say, no, we got to negotiate this, because if I don't like what I see, I'm going to tell people that I don't like what I see. I want to be able to say negative things. I want to be able to be independent and not be colluding, if you would, with you about this. So even though that might have been, some of that might be in the original contract, it probably was vetted out when, through negotiations, because a contract is not really set in stone necessarily until both sides have signed it, right? Well, it's not set in stone until both sides have signed it, and the thing that both sides sign probably mostly usually looks a lot different than the original the original draft of it. So you can't always take things at face value when you hear them, because everyone enters into their own agreements usually. Everyone negotiates at some point. So given that, around the Middle-earth Shadows of Mordor branding deal, there were reviewers, YouTube reviewers, and I guess Twitch streamers who got review copies of it for a branding deal, which basically said something to the effect of they needed to do a certain number of videos and so on and so forth. We don't really know, as far as I know, we don't know what actually was required for that branding deal. But what we do know is that they were given, that was the only stipulation usually. That was the main stipulation for getting a review copy early. Although from what I understand, TB was able to negotiate with them and get one anyway without entering into the brand deal. Just not as early as the others had had their review copies. And I will link you to the article that talks a little bit about this. Well, I think it talks a little bit more in depth about it than what I can really do from my memory here, but it does link into all the other things I was saying, where YouTube and Twitch are increasingly being viewed as a place for people to go and find out about a game and use it as use those videos as a purchasing mechanism, as a mechanism for making informed purchases, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And that's a good thing, but it also means that a lot of this stuff is going to start coming up where people are going to need to be very transparent about what they're doing and very transparent about where their money's coming from. I think the thing that hurts a lot is, I know that YouTube has historically had this veil of secrecy around what exactly YouTube content creators are making as far as click-through rates and all that stuff. Mostly because not really, it has nothing really to do with the content creators themselves. It has mostly to do with YouTube not wanting to tip their hand to other sites to their competitors like Yahoo, who also need ad rates, right? Because if Yahoo knew how much Google was charging for ad rates, then they could then come in and undercut Google and wrest advertisers away. So that's why there's this whole veil of secrecy around what rate are you actually getting and all this stuff, and it's rare for anybody to talk about it, because most of the time it's mum's the word there, because they could lose their AdWords accounts and stuff by giving out that information. But I think that given that YouTubers and Twitchers are being used in this way, as I said, the transparency is going to be the most important thing for them. Even if it's not required by the laws of their country, it is probably a good idea. It's probably just a good idea to do it anyway. Even though it can also bring that backlash. I see a lot of it going out there where people are just accused, as soon as they show off a server or something like that, they're accused of being a sellout and all that stuff. And that's a very immature thing, because you're assuming that they, yes, granted, they're doing it for fun. They're having fun at their job, right? It's, I guess there's a lot of envy there too, because a lot of people do not have fun at their job. And the fact that they see somebody who is having fun at their job and also treating it as a job and getting paid, treating it as a business and getting paid for their work, through various means, not just means that everyone else is getting paid for. It can leave some sour tastes in a few people's mouths, but I think it's all above the board, and everything is that this is stuff to be expected going forward. And I think it's a good thing, because I think it means that it's increasingly becoming a viable career, and it's becoming the new media, if you will, which is kind of a cliche thing to say, but it really is. I mean, it's that media companies are in it for the money, and not necessarily for the accuracy, but for the money. And we're seeing some YouTubers, some trolls on YouTube that are in for it for the money, but for the most part, we're seeing, I would say, YouTubers are in that early phase where it's more like, hey, we're here to do the right thing. We're here for the journalism, if you will, not for the selling of papers. Whereas you can look at a lot of the old media now, and you can say it's hard to say whether they're in it for the journalism or for just the sales of newspapers. With all the headlines that they tend to tramp up or trope up or whatever you want to call it. So I think we're still in the early phase, and I think we're in the good phase. So those are my completely random thoughts on that matter. As always, links to the relevant articles will be in the description. I am totally not vying for time here while I look over my list. So next thing on my list, the Gamergate stuff. It's one of those things that just won't die for whatever reason. I'm not going to talk too much about it, because it's just, I think I've talked enough about it, and I don't really want to deal with it anymore. But there was a recent happening that was largely caused from the whole Gamergate vocal segment of crazy people, where apparently they complained to Intel about articles that were published that were pro-female developer, pro-female inclusion into video games on Gamasutra, which is a major it's a major gaming journalism site. A lot of people probably don't know about Gamasutra because it started out life, and it still largely is a developer centric site. It's, the only reason I know about it is because I still follow a lot of the articles around. I had, for the longest time, I had Game Developer Magazine, which ended up dying out. I don't think Game Developer Magazine exists anymore. But for the longest time, I had that because it had these highly technical articles in there about, hey, here's some postmortems on this game. Here's what went right and here's what went wrong in the development of this game. It was very fascinating stuff to read, and those postmortems still show up on Gamasutra. They still do them. I think it's just the print media doesn't exist anymore. And so I'll jump on there from time to time just to read some of them, because it's fascinating to see some of the things that some of the challenges that the developers have faced in particular games, and what they were going for and what they felt like they didn't accomplish that they wanted to accomplish, that they set out to accomplish, and why they think they didn't accomplish it, how they're structuring their teams. A lot of them are doing the agile development stuff that is prevalent throughout business development, which is what I do. So it's, to me, being a developer, it's fascinating stuff to read. And there used to be like really technical articles in there too, like, hey, here's how to implement a fast A-star search path algorithm, which is sort of the classic pathfinding algorithm that you see in games like StarCraft and other RTS games. In order for units, you click somewhere on the map and the units find their way there. Well, that's a pathing algorithm. It may not be A-star anymore because that was the old style one, but it might be some iteration of that allows units to quickly quickly find their way from point A to point B, and not only find the shortest route, but also find the correct route that doesn't cause them any damage, and also doesn't take up too many CPU cycles in the AI routines, so that there's still cycles left over to do all the graphics rendering and the music and so on and so forth. So to me, those were gold mines of articles to read on Gamasutra. It's just a really, really fascinating thing, because the thing that I've always said is that the thing that I've always admired about game developers is that they push hardware to its limits, right? So the good game developers, the ones that have been around forever and ever, are the ones that really know how to get the most performance out of every little algorithm that they come up with. And when you see what they do, the techniques that they employ to get these, to squeeze all that performance out of a melon, basically, you can look at that and then you can apply that to, the area that I apply to, which is, I don't do gaming, but I do regular business applications. I can look at some of those techniques and I can apply them elsewhere and go, hey, that actually works over here too. What works for your performance also sends the work for performance over on this side, and things that you found that don't perform well, don't perform well over there either. Although they might perform acceptably over in the business land. It may take my web page 2 seconds to load, which might be a little bit too long, but it's not long enough that people will leave either. Whereas in a game, taking 2 seconds to figure out for a unit to go from point A to figure out how to go from point A to point B, or how to make steps in between, would be a complete game killer, right? Because you wouldn't be able to do anything for those 2 second increments. So I said all that to say that Gamasutra is a well regarded site, and they've had a lot of articles around the not only the Gamersgate stuff, but also the representation of women in the industry and representation of women as gamers, and various, I guess, investigative journalism, if you'd say that, various perspectives. They've had several female developers write articles on there and give their perspectives. And apparently, this whole Gamersgate movement caught on to that and decided to attack Gamasutra. Instead of attacking, they've tried attacking the site itself, but instead of, in addition to doing that, they also decided to try to attack Gamasutra's funding, which is, it's a largely ad-funded endeavor, because they don't really have print media anymore, as far as I know. So it's mostly ad-driven, and they had a whole campaign, an Intel campaign that was running on the Gamasutra site, and so these Gamersgate people went to Intel and fabricated fabricated negative viewpoint of what was going on the Gamasutra site. They spun it in a way that it made it look like Gamasutra was doing a very unpopular thing, a very controversial thing, a very I don't know what I'm trying to find the correct word, but basically they managed to stir up Intel enough that Intel went and pulled the rest of their campaign. They just ended their campaign. They pulled their ads off of Gamasutra, which hurts that site in its purse strings, where it hurts the most, for largely invalid reasons. And so I'll link you guys to the article that actually explains this a little bit more. There was an update recently where Intel said, "Oh, crap, you're right. We were totally trolled and we didn't realize it." But they realize their error now. But given that, they still haven't reneged on terminating their ad campaign with Gamasutra. So in the end, even though they acknowledged that they possibly made a mistake in listening to some of this feedback, some of that negative feedback on what was going on, they have not really technically rectified it. They just said, "Yep, sorry, but yeah, we've already canceled it, so oh well." So yeah, that's. I'm not going to talk anymore about that because the whole thing is just, it reeks of just terribleness, and I don't want to give that any more brain cells than any brain cells I devote to that are just going to die. So I might as well do a better job of that just drinking. At least I'll be getting something for my efforts then. So that takes care of that, I would think. Now I have a bunch of little minor update thingies here going on. A couple games that I've been trying to take a look at, or that I want to look at, and I don't have much to say about them because a lot of them are early. They haven't been really released yet. I haven't had a chance to look at them, but I'm just gonna kind of rattle them off and give you links to check them out. So first of all, I just came upon an article on Rock Paper Shotgun about a game called Robocraft: Rise of the Walkers. It's in the alpha state right now. I'd actually heard of Robocraft before, but it's one of those things where I hear about something and then I forget to write it down, and then it never really enters my long-term memory. It just kind of disappears. But this one is the reason it's on my radar is because it's basically kind of BattleBots, pretty much. I know there's been a lot of games that have tried to replicate the whole BattleBots thing, where you build up these robots and you go battle them out, and to moderate success. And I suspect Robocraft will have moderate success as well. But I figured I'd take a look at it, or at least I was going to try to take a look at it, and see what it's like. It basically, if you look at the link that I've provided, there's a video there. It shows they've got crawling robots that you make. You duke it out online with other people, and you gain experience from that. And you actually pilot the bots that you've built, and you try to outpace the others. There's a boss mode where you are, if you significantly outrank or outlevel your opponents, at a random point in time, you will be the boss, and you'll have 20 opponents at once that you have to face that are lower level opponents. So you sort of have to go and it's like the reverse boss battle. Boss battle. Wow, that was an interesting English word there. It's a reverse boss battle where you are the boss and you're trying to defend yourself from all these little pinpricks coming from the low level people. So it sounds like a really cool concept. There's an alpha out there for it. I actually just tried, before I started recording here, I tried to sign up, but their website's having a bit of a math issue. You know how websites have this sort of, we need to verify that you're a human, and so we'll verify that you're a human by giving you a simple math problem to solve. Well, yeah, apparently 4 plus 5 does not equal 9. I've been lied to my entire life. Or their human verification bot is having a bit of a problem where it can't determine the correct results for things. Although, now that I think about it, I probably should have tried 9.0 or 8.999999999 because I assumed that it wanted an integer, but it may actually be asking for a decimal, and it may have a rounding issue along the way too. So yeah, I'll leave you guys a link to the Rock Paper Shotgun article. It talks a little bit about it. It links to an earlier article where I talk a little bit more about it. But it looks kind of interesting. It's still very early from what I can tell, but it's got a bit of a community behind it. So that's always a good thing, especially for a multiplayer game. So I think you guys might want to take a look at it, and maybe you'll have better luck with the human bot than I will. I don't know what their business model is yet. It strikes me as being a possibly free-to-play game with some kind of pay in, some kind of cosmetic pay thing. I'm not sure. I couldn't put my finger on it because I didn't see any obvious buy links on their website, and maybe I missed it, when I was looking around. So it seemed to me like I could download the alpha, and then that maybe it would be free all the time. I'm not entirely sure. So that's something we'll have to dig into further for later on. In addition, Rock Paper Shotgun was talking about a game called Space Rogue, which they describe as a FTL meets Space Rangers kind of game. There's a little bit of like footage on the game, but the game itself hasn't been released in any kind of form yet. It's not on Kickstarter or anything like that. It's just an announcement of an upcoming game that's, I think, is scheduled for next year sometime. But it might be something you want to put on your radars because it looks interesting. It sounds interesting. I just don't know what kind of game it's actually going to be. It bills itself as a real-time strategy game with roguelike or roguelite elements in it, which is where the whole FTL thing comes in. Basically the video shows a ship finding an alien adrift in space, and the ship pulls them in, and then the alien freaks out and starts killing all the crew, and there's fires all around it. It's basically, there's scenarios in FTL where you jump into an area and suddenly you're boarded by enemies, and you have to fight them off, and they cause fires and damage and all kinds of stuff. That's pretty much what it looked like, although it was semi 3D. It was like 2.5D from what I could tell. And there's apparently some real-time strateginess to it. I don't know how that works. I really don't. I don't know how you classify that as a real-time strategy game. I don't know what exactly they mean by that, but that's maybe something to keep in the back of your brain if you're, because if you're into sci-fi like I am, it sounds like a thing that it would be necessary to to keep an eye on. I would be remiss if I did not talk about Origins on the House thing today. Dragon Age Origins is free right now until October 14th on Origin, if you have Origin, the Origin service. Origin has this on the house stuff that they do. I believe it's monthly. Usually it's like Bejeweled, which whatever. I guess I could download Bejeweled for free. I don't know why I would, but it's or it's some puzzle game like that. It's like whatever. But this month, a couple months ago, it was Battlefield 3. I picked Battlefield 3 up. This month it is, well, this not even month. This week, if that, it is Dragon Age Origins, and I have confirmed that it is in fact free. I downloaded it myself and installed it. And I've never actually played Dragon Age at all, so I wasn't sure what to expect from it. But yeah, it's basically Dragon Age Origins is basically reminding me of Neverwinter Nights. So that's an interesting concept, although it's a little bit more modernized version of it. So yeah, Dragon Age Origins apparently is a very good game. I have not, like I said, I've never played it. I just played like 5 to 10 minutes of it to see what it was like, and it looks pretty good. It looks like an old school thing. So, if you're into that, if you're into the RPS, wow, all my acronyms are just all messed up tonight. It's getting a bit late. So, if you're into that, if you're into the Dragon Age stuff, or you're into the RPG stuff, you might want to go pick it up for free. Why not? It's not going to hurt you at all, except for the only thing that's going to hurt you is the installation of Origin. And yes, it pains me to have Origin on this machine, but it's, if I can get some free stuff out of it, then I'll get some free stuff out of it. I mean, I've got the damn Ubisoft launcher crap on here, which I can't get rid of because Watch Dogs and other things require it. The crew requires it and all that stuff. So, if I have to deal with that, I might as well deal with Origin. I even had, what was it? Windows, oh God. The Windows Store stuff. Games for Windows. I even had that. Games for Windows Live, I had that on here at one point in time too, because there was a game that I had that required it. So, yeah, it makes me cringe, but if you're, it's what you have to put up with if you want something for free. So I will link you guys to the Polygon article that describes the Dragon Age Origins for free on Origin. But obviously, you can also just go to the Origin service, go to the On the House category, and you will see it right there until October 14th. So hurry, and get it. I've been playing. I played on Friday night. I took a little break. My normal live stream, I still did the live stream, but I took a little break from Divinity Original Sin just because I have I have at least 10 to 20 hours of footage recorded, and I've only gone through about maybe 5 of it, if that. On the YouTube, so I've got a lot of footage. So I figured I would just take a break for a week and try something else. I had completely forgotten about a fan-made game that came out. The first episode of it was released last month, and I completely forgot about it, and I was reminded of it. It's called Diaspora Shattered Armistice, and I will leave you guys a link to the wiki or the download area. I'll probably give you a link to the wiki because there is a link to the download area there. Maybe I'll do both. I'm not sure. I have to dig it up. I haven't dug it up yet. But it is built in the FreeSpace 2 Open engine, the same engine that Wing Commander Saga was in. Which I still have to get back to that. I have all that raw footage still lying around, and I've been having hard drive space issues, so I should really get to that at some point. But yeah, it's built on top of that. It's built on top of a newer version of the FreeSpace 2 open source project, which is run mostly by Hardlight Productions and the whole group of developers over there doing that. So what is it? It is a Diaspora Shattered Armistice is a Battlestar Galactica fan-made game. It's in the Battlestar Galactica universe. It does not take place on the Galactica. It takes place on another Battlestar called the Thesis. Thesis. I keep calling it Thesis because it looks like that, but it's really Thesis, I believe, or Theseus. I think Theseus is how they pronounce it in the game. The voice actors, that is. So it's kind of cool. It's in the same engine as Wing Commander Saga. It's runs really well. It's pretty graphics. There's some weirdness with some of the base star polygons in the base star. They don't look quite right sometimes. There was one mission in particular early on where you have to take out a base star's heavy rockets or heavy missile launchers, and you can't even see them. I don't even know what the target because the models are very, very low poly for the base stars, but it looks fairly decent. It works fairly decent. Works a lot. It's as fluid as, say, Wing Commander Saga. The only problem I have with it is that it is as good as Wing Commander Saga was with balancing the types of missions. It does suffer from the same thing that it suffered from Wing Commander Saga suffered from, which is the difficulty suddenly spikes for no apparent reason. And the other thing it suffers from is that some of the missions are they're not odd, but they feel like they're in the wrong order. The early missions I played on the live stream were the one mission I just failed at 5 times, and the game's finally like, nope. Would you like to skip this mission now because you failed 5 times? I'm like, yeah, I guess I will, because it doesn't make any sense. It was just so ridiculously hard to do that I couldn't fathom how to work it. What was going on? So it has a bit of that problem. It also has a bit of a story problem. The story is somewhat solid, but it's not. It doesn't feel as polished as Wing Commander Saga's story was. But then again, Wing Commander Saga took 11 years to bake, whereas this one has only been, I think, a year or two, if that. It was basically much of the devs from the Beyond the Red Line mod for Free Space 2 Open. They basically split due to creative differences and went over and started this other project. And Beyond the Red Line, as far as I know, just pretty much was abandoned. That was a pretty good one too. That took place in the Battlestar Galactica universe as well, and it feels really good to fly a Viper. It also feels like they're really made of tissue paper. I think it felt better. The really good thing that felt really good in Diaspora here was you get to fly in a Raptor, and that was a lot of fun. That was a hell of a lot of fun. But again, it was kind of like bullet shield things going on there, and it has its rust around it. As a fan-made game that you can see some of the rusty areas. It's not quite as smoothed over as I would kind of like, even for a fan-made game. But again, being a fan-made game, I'm kind of expecting a little bit of that. So going into it, and you will cringe at the voice acting, but I mean that's par for the course. That doesn't bother me. But it is supposed to be an episodic thing. So this is like episode 1 was released, and now they're working on several other episodes of it. So you might want to go check it out. It's free. You can download it, install it. It should work on most systems from what I could see. So you might want to take a look at it. I just did a little live stream of it. I might circle around and record stuff from it. I didn't record the live stream at all. I might go back and record something, but I'll do that once I've played through it once, just to see what it's like. Because there were some shades of I didn't really like some of the things I had to do there, and I really didn't like the fact that I couldn't change the HUD colors like I could in Wing Commander Saga, because the green tends to blend in with all the backgrounds that they do. So that's what I have there. I think that just about covers what I wanted to talk about as far as Diaspora goes. And I have a bunch of other things on here as well, a bunch of other games that I wanted to talk about, but I think I'm pretty well, I know for a fact I'm getting tired, but I think I'm pretty well wrapping up here. I'll say one more thing. I'll finish up with this. Apparently, there's a TV show in the works that takes place in the game of Myst, or in the Myst video game TV adaptation going on. I'll leave you a link to Polygon that talks about it a little bit. And it's being done by Legendary Entertainment, and it involves the original creators of Myst, Rand and Robin Miller. And I'll tell you what, if I understand correctly what the Myst story was, where it had to do with these linking books that would send you to different universes, and you would write the linking books, and that would create the universe. Of all the video game adaptations to TV that I could think of, that sounds rather fantastic. If that is how they're doing it, like you can write these books and you can make these universes, and you'll be traversing between them, and make that into a TV series, I would watch the hell out of that. There are other things that I'm kind of like, what the hell? How could you make a movie out of Tetris and all that stuff? Which, believe it or not, there is a movie about Tetris that is being made. But as far as video game franchises go, with Myst, that would sound like that is a fantastic concept for a TV show. And if that comes through to fruition, that is going to be awesome. Fruition, not fruition. That will be great. I will be watching the hell out of that if that materializes. So I'll leave you a link to that in the description as always. And I think that will just about do it for this episode of Cube Ramblings. Thank you very, very much for watching, everybody, and I will see you guys next Sunday as usual.